Greetings on behalf of the New England CCIM chapter. I'm Michael Chase, chapter president for 2022. Before we get started, I would like to give a quick thank you to our annual sponsors, our gold level sponsors, Geronimo Properties and Northmark, our silver level sponsors, May Property Management, and St. James Real Estate Advisors. I would also like to mention our chapter's charitable partner for 2022, New View Communities, a CDC organization promoting affordable housing and serving 22 communities in central Massachusetts. To find out how you can become a sponsor of the New England CCIM chapter or learn more about New View Communities, please feel free to visit our websites. I'll add links in the description below. Okay, today is our first video for our 2022 CCIM Expert Series. We're pleased to be joined by Justin Lamontagne, a commercial broker and partner at the Dunham Group. Justin holds both the CCIM and SIOR designations and is here today to talk about the industrial market in Maine. Justin, thank you for joining us. Would you like to take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. I really do appreciate the invite, and thank you to all the sponsors as well. And look forward to the conversation. As you and I were just chuckling about, you'll see I'm sitting at home, not because of COVID. I'm recovering from a minor knee injury, so I've got my knee elevated. So please excuse the messy kitchen. But I think we can still have a nice conversation about the industrial market. I've been in commercial real estate since 2006, and I'm an industrial and office specialist working at the Dunham Group since 2011. We are an independent boutique commercial real estate firm, working in all sectors, but my area of expertise and really what I find the most joy in working on is the industrial market. And there's just a lot to talk about. It's been a fascinating decade, and the pandemic has added so many new pressures and opportunities. So I'm excited to dive in.
Great. We're looking forward to hearing about some of those pressures and especially opportunities. So to start us off, could you give us an overview of where the industrial market in Maine is at the start of 2022?
Well, I just finished, every year I write an annual report on the industrial market, have been doing it for 10 years. So I've been 11 years actually. I've been tracking the statistics, and I keep an eye on the entire country and regions. We work with CoStar. We look at sort of the, what they're seeing for trends and statistics. And after doing this year's analysis, I think it's really fair for me to say that greater Portland, Maine is mired in probably as constricting a supply and demand imbalance as we're seeing in the entire country. Our vacancy is now at about 1.69%. And that's for a market of 22 million square feet. We're around 350,000 square feet of availability. We've added about 500,000 square feet of new inventory in the last 2 years, which for a small market like ours, that's pretty serious. That's a lot for us, but it's all been absorbed. And so one of the predictions I've made in my forecast for this year is I think we're going to go below 1% in the first 2 quarters of this year. And as you can imagine, that just creates a myriad of challenges and issues, mostly for end users and tenants. It's never been a stronger landlord's market. It's never been more competitive. And for small and medium-sized businesses, which is really what Maine is, that's what we're all about, they can't grow. They can't add jobs because they don't have the bricks and mortar, and they do not have the available space in order to do so. So I think, it stands to reason we're going to start to see more new construction, but as quickly as we can build it, it's getting sucked right up. And again, the pandemic created some of those added pressures. I think what we learned in the last 2 years is that everything that the industrial market produces is, essential. And it's our food, it's our cleaning supplies. It's everything that we kind of rely on for the basic necessities of life, right? All are coming from industrial parks. So it's really exacerbated what was already a very competitive sector. So it's been fun, it's been interesting, but it's absolutely with some significant challenges, particularly if you're representing, businesses and end users.
So when you talk about new construction, maybe you're already at that point already. Is it spec construction at this point? Is it pre-leased? How long does it take for something once ground breaks to get leased?
Yeah, a little bit of both, as you'd imagine. I'd say mostly led by end users, just owner users who are looking to build for themselves. That's usually the path of least resistance. Speculative development, there's been a few projects, but not a ton. But we're encouraging more. And I think that the success stories of those that have gone up and they all have been very successful in leasing during construction or even a little bit after construction is complete. They're getting their pricing, they're getting their lease rates that they need to support the projects. So I think we'll start to see more of that. We actually don't have a ton of industrial land left in Greater Portland, so we're starting to have conversations with municipalities about expanding zoning, and they are embracing it. They're now finally recognizing that the industrial sector isn't, our granddad's old dirty companies. These are high tech, very, very world class distribution centers. The bioscience and life science industries have anchored some new major construction projects in industrial settings, creating things like vaccines and testing. And, Abbott Labs is a major driver of business here in Southern Maine. And so there's a lot of opportunity in those sectors, I think, for a lot of different towns in and around Greater Portland.
So when you say Greater Portland, would you mind taking a moment defining what does that encompass? How far north, south, west of Portland does Greater Portland cover?
About a 30-minute radius, I would say, plus or minus. My report covers Portland, South Portland, Scarborough, Saco, Biddeford, Westbrook, and Gorham. And we just recently added Falmouth. So those that are familiar with Maine, you know what all those towns are. But that's really the bulk of where our industrial inventory is. If you go 30 minutes north of Portland, the Mid-Coast, Brunswick area, Topsom area, there are some industrial properties and parks, but much smaller and a little bit harder to track. So I've kind of decided to hone in on those 8 towns and cities, and I think it gives us a real good kind of understanding as to the health of Greater Portland. And as Portland goes, the rest of the state goes. And so there's been a lot of industrial growth in Lewiston, Auburn areas, in Bangor, in Augusta, in the northern parts of the state, where again, less inventory, but demand is still pretty steady, and we're seeing the same kind of pressures. The other major driver in the industrial sector, even prior to the pandemic, was cannabis. Maine is a cannabis-friendly state. We were one of the first to adopt medicinal. We were one of the first to adopt recreational, but our legislature took forever to get it going. So it actually just got kind of hung up in Augusta for a couple, 3 years. So we're a little bit behind the ball there now. But all of that is to say, we've got retail stores all over the place. It's a very, very healthy and popular product in Maine, and one that's pretty well supported. And they're sucking up all the space. And I'll tell you, in 2021, I can't believe some of the pricing and some of the amounts that they're willing to pay in order to win deals and win space. I don't want to say they don't have a budget, but I'll tell you, if we have an industrial building that is zoned appropriate for cannabis, and we have a cannabis-friendly landlord who's comfortable with it and his bank's okay with it, and we've got the infrastructure, the power, the municipal utilities, we can make up a number and they'll pay it. It's unreal. And I have to imagine that's not sustainable, but at least in 2021, some of the larger deals we did this year were specific to cannabis, and no other industry can afford what they can pay.
Very interesting. So it sounds as if there are a number of trends from 2021 that are continuing on into 2022. Do you see any trends that are changing as you're coming into 2022 and for the upcoming year?
Well, I do think that cannabis, craft brewing is another industry that has been really popular in Maine. They're going to start to see a bit of a slowdown simply because they have no more space. They're just so difficult to place. And new construction is difficult for cannabis because it's federally illegal. So you can't have any financing, any real traditional financing to support it. So they're not really we're not adding new construction for that industry. Inventory is going to be our biggest issue. It starts and ends there is how are we going to come up with new inventory? I'm just not seeing any potential signs of, this industry is really struggling and we might see some vacancies there. It's going to be a long year, I think, Michael.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we see it certainly in other markets as well, where it used to be the old real estate cycle was the next area swath of growth, industrial would go first. And then as population migrated outward, industrial would then be repositioned with a higher and better use.
Yeah.
But now with, last mile delivery, industrial is becoming that higher and better use for older retail or
empty office.
An office. And so you must be seeing that as well.
we're starting to, and we're starting to see some real concern and bordering on panic in the suburban office market. There are a ton of large open office spaces that are becoming available by these, Fortune 1000 companies that can just afford to have their people stay at home, kind of redesign the way they're going to work, and not come back to the physical office space. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we start to convert those to light industrial. That'll take cooperation with municipalities, zoning, landlords, of course, and probably other tenants. So I know a lot of press has been made about, big box retail being converted to warehousing, and we've seen a number of those projects work very successfully in Maine. I think that'll continue, but I really do think that there's some opportunity for conversion of office space as well, because I just don't know how that sector. I think it's going to come back. I do a lot of office work too, and we're seeing demand, but on a smaller scale. It's the smaller, more nimble offices, more nimble businesses that can make quicker decisions. But the big boys are there. I don't see them coming back to the office anytime soon.
Interesting. So what would you say is one thing you're really advising your clients on as you're looking out for the remainder of the year?
Instead of 3 or 4 months notice, I need 9 or 12 months notice. So we're keeping a close eye on renewals. Boy, renewals have created some issues. When you write a lease, generally the renewal rate is at then market rate. That's kind of the standard that we have here in Maine, at least. So 5 years ago, we did an industrial deal at $5-6 a square foot and got a couple renewals. Everyone's happy, and it's at then market rates. Well, that then market rate today could be as high as 10, 11, 12, almost doubling what it was 5 years ago. So it's creating major sticker shock for tenants. It's creating major friction. Landlords have a great opportunity to make more rent, but it could come at the cost of ruining a relationship with a tenant, or perhaps even losing that tenant and having to go through the pain and cost of replacing them. So you got to balance, is it worth it to get every last penny at the expense of potentially a really good tenant? So we're trying to navigate and manage those waters as best as possible. And like anything, just getting ahead of it, being communicative. And again, instead of me looking 3 or 4 months to start this process, we're looking a year ahead, oftentimes now, because if they are going to need new space or find a new location, it's going to take a while. It very well may need, you might need a little stroke of luck here or there. But you got to be really plugged into the market. Our jobs as brokers has really never been more important, because we're so, ears to the ground. We know what's coming, and we're able to frankly tell our clients, if this opportunity comes, there's no hemming and hawing. There's not a lot of negotiation. It's if you need this space to make whatever it is you make and do your business, we got to get it. And there's no, there's no thinking about it. You got to be very aggressive when the opportunity comes up.
And you mentioned opportunities. In fact, at the very beginning of our discussion, you said some of the opportunities for the upcoming year. What are some opportunities that you may be seeing out there?
Well, I think the great health, if you want to call it health, in the greater Portland area, in the industrial market, is going to lead into the rest of the state. And the rest of the state does have more land. We're starting to run, better fiber optic cabling throughout the state. We've got a lot of rural parts of Maine that are not totally connected. So there are some opportunities for more rural parts of the state to leverage and take advantage of our space crunch in greater Portland. And, we've got a great highway system. 95 runs through 60% of the state. And there's a lot of land off those highway exits that can be developed. There's a couple already potentially healthy industrial parks in the Gardner area. Gorham Industrial Park is expanding. So I think the most opportunity is land, and trying to, brace for the next new construction wave, because we've had some decent success the last 2 years, but we need more.
Great. That's what they say about real estate, right? Land. They're not making any more of it.
Not making any more of it. Well, it's really interesting, because it's not a lesson that I learned. In 2006, when I got started, we immediately went into the big recession. Everything stopped. 2010, 11, the phones were not ringing. The last thing we were thinking and talking about was development and new construction, for whether it was office or industrial or really anything. So I spent 10, 15 years without having land on my radar whatsoever. So it's been a really great, it's been a fun opportunity for me to really understand ground up development and sort of the timing of it all. And I'll tell you, CCIM has lended itself really well to those types of lessons and things. You guys have done a nice job putting together a catalog of classes on that exact subject, and I've encouraged myself and some of my younger brokers to take a look, because the older guys, they did it in the 80s. They did plenty of development, but we didn't in the last 10 or 15 years. So we got to get caught up pretty quick.
That's great. And thank you for mentioning CCIM. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you as we're getting close to wrapping up here. What are some things that the New England CCIM chapter can be doing to help support professionals such as yourself?
Well, I've always thought of CCIM as, well, a couple things. I think the networking is fantastic, but really probably in my mind, first and foremost is the education component. You guys have always taken a lead on creating really good, interesting classes with good, interesting speakers who have done it. They've kind of walked the walk, which is what I've always appreciated. I love the in-person stuff, but I know we're really largely virtual right now, which is convenient coming from a relatively inconvenient place like Maine, where we're sort of off the beaten path. It's not always easy for us to just travel somewhere for an in-person class. So to have the opportunity and really that menu of options of virtual classes that we have now is pretty awesome. So I absolutely continue, to encourage you guys to continue that trend. And then the networking, anytime I have a need or a requirement that might take us out of the state, the first place I go to is the CCIM directory, and try to understand, who might be the best fit in whatever market I might be looking at. So that's fantastic. I look forward to getting back to live, conferences and events and networking. It will come back. It is coming back. I actually just last week went to my first conference here in Maine, about 400 or 500 people. So it was a well attended, but it was very safe. Everyone had to have the cards, and we were wearing masks and 6 feet apart. So it's a new sort of in-person experience, but it's so much better. As much as I enjoy doing this with you, I'd much rather be doing this over lunch.
Agreed. And we'll eventually get back to that. But
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Justin. You are certainly one of the ones who walk the walk. So we're always glad to be able to talk with you and hear your thoughts on the market. So thank you for taking the time with us. And thank you for watching this video. You can follow Justin on LinkedIn, and I will add his LinkedIn URL in the description below. We have a great lineup of speakers coming, and we'll be posting more content throughout the year. So please like and subscribe below and keep an eye on this channel. Also, feel free to follow the New England CCIM chapter on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Thank you for viewing.